This is Samira from Concave AGRI, and with us is David Davies from AgUnity and Ali Iqbal, President Concave AGRI. So over to you, both of you. Thank you so much for joining the session.
So in essence, that's what AgUnity does, but it's actually quite different to what most other solutions are. And this is because we started back in Kenya in 2016, and then we did projects in Papua New Guinea and Myanmar right after that. So we were dealing with areas where, firstly, a lot of our farmers have never owned a phone before. Certainly not a smartphone, where sometimes they've got feature phones, but very rarely a smartphone. And to be quite frank, a modern smartphone is too advanced and too much geared for people like us to really be useful for a very low income farmer. So we simplify the interface and we make it work when there's no connectivity. So if a farmer, when there's no connectivity, it still remembers everything. It can still do transactions. So the farmer can say, hand over their crop or order something. And when they get signal or when they hotspot off someone or where the other party goes back to the cooperative, that transaction goes through. So that's a very important one. It deals with the lack of signal, which is, and that's interesting. In countries like Ethiopia, they've got incredibly good telco coverage, but a lot of times the farmers just can't afford to top up a data plan. So we've got farmers that never actually connect to the system, particularly in Papua New Guinea where it's a bit expensive. We've got farmers that just never been online, the system still works. So very simple interface. We replace certain elements of Android operating system and we clean up Android a bit. And that also allows us to do things like push updates to the phone. So one of the other things, and we had really interesting stories from banks in Papua New Guinea about this, that like a normal banking app for a farmer can be quite complicated because they actually had a situation where they deployed mobile banking to farmers and then the network went down for some reason and the farmers all got together and they were going to assault the branch agent in the village because they thought the bank had stolen the money. So there's interesting problems. And so what we do is we change that so that whatever happens, they'll still see what the last balance is, even if they can't get an update. So that helps us, update applications and things like that. And then finally, there's actually a very good case study, and I'll get it sent to you. It's written by Virginia Tech University, and this is a project we ran with them in Kenya, backed by USAID. And that's the template for a $50 million project that we will be part of in Kenya. So it'll be rolling out to about 1 million farmers in Kenya. And it tells some really good stories about how we improve the income the farmers are getting to vegetables. We got vegetables to areas where they weren't getting supplied. So it was fixing a lot of supply chain stuff. But the most important aspect worth highlighting there is the AgUnity phone is like the center. So what we've done is we've made it as a push downable applets. So our phone has a lot of features like, tell farmers I've got a supply or get paid or order a solar kit, but we can push those, we can create those for other organizations. So we create them for fair trade, we create them for World Food Programme, we create them for banks and insurance companies, things that we don't want to do ourselves, like marketplaces and stuff. And so once we deploy the phone to the farmer, we can go to the bank or the microloan facility or the insurer and we can say, okay, we'll push down an application and we'll also send them a training video. So we can send a farmer in, sorry, I forget the pronunciation, Urdu, like a little animated video that says, this is what insurance is. This is why you should put $1 away every month. And if you put $1 away, then if you get sick, this is what will happen. So we can do those things that can help the farmer understand what they're getting. And we can do that all remotely. So the farmer never needs to go near anything. And so that's kind of the basis of what the AgUnity platform is. And then we work with a lot of the major NGOs in the world, everyone from USAID to World Food Programme, a lot of the big commodity buyers, Fair Trade Organisation is our biggest one. We work with World Fish extensively, GIZ, a lot of the others that are operating that also have a very big interest in Pakistan. I know this because when we started speaking to Imran Khan's office, a lot of our NGO partners were very interested in, how can I say this politely? They'd had a lot of problem with projects in Pakistan before with the money not getting where they want. And because we've got traceability to farmers, we can make sure that we can account for 100% of what goes on in our system. And World Food Programme and others thought that would really particularly valuable and interesting in the case of Pakistan. And so, yeah, our biggest one at the moment we're working on is we're working with Oromia Coffee Union in Ethiopia, which has 550,000 members, and we'll be rolling out with Safaricom and M-Pesa to about 550,000, but that'll probably, once you include the other coffee cooperatives and everything, will probably reach about 1 million users in Ethiopia in the next 3 years as part of that program. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's where we are.
Thank you, David. It was really interesting to know about, and we'll be looking forward to the case study. But, it's very interesting that once you are telling us about what AgUnity is doing, it's very similar to Concave AGRI principles as well, and what we have been trying to do in components as well.
Thank you, David, for your time. And now I think there's a lot of activity being going on to AgUnity, with the serious work which people are doing since the last 6 odd years. The fabulous stories are coming up. For example, you are working in the 9 commodities in 9 countries at the moment. What I gathered from the website, very much interested to read. And also, this is something very interesting that you have been doing a lot of projects which are related to African and small landholders, I should say. In the even in the Asia Pacific region, you are very much active, which I have seen. So can you tell us about the core activities and achievements which have been made through this platform, which you are working to solve the problems of the small landholders, especially, and overall for the farming community?
Excellent. Yes, no worries. So, as AgUnity provides like a very simplified smartphone that's designed with a user interface that's designed for people that have never had a phone before. So big geometric shapes, primary colors, press the blue circle when I'm going to hand over a crop. It also works, we changed the Android operating system so we can do things like push updates, but we can also make the phones work when there's no connectivity. The phones communicate with each other using QR codes because it works everywhere. And that allows farmers to work when they either haven't got connectivity or whether they can't afford to pay for a data plan. So we've got lots of farmers in New Guinea, for example, that just don't pay for data plans. And in Ethiopia, it's very similar. The person from the cooperative tends to give everyone a hotspot when they turn up. So that's quite important for reducing the cost of the farmers. It's also designed to be the center of a platform. So we for organizations like Fairtrade and banks and others, we create downloadable push apps, and we can say, push those out to the farmer's app. So we've done that recently in Papua New Guinea, where we sent them an app to say, this is how you can get a bank account. And we'd like to do that more and more with things like insurance and marketplaces and things like that. We don't try to do everything. We just try to be the center platform that enables lots of other services to be available to the farmers. And there's a really good case study on this plan based in Kenya, written by Virginia Tech as part of a big initiative by USAID. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do. We also build, substantial systems for the farm. We build systems for Fairtrade and the cooperatives and others, and we build a lot of other interconnected stuff that goes along with the phone system. But really, if you want to have a significant impact on low-end farmers, they've got to have a platform of their own. They've got to be able to record their own data. They've got to be able to see, you've got to be able to communicate with them. And once you do that, you improve trust and cooperation between those farmers. And once you do that, most of the time they solve a lot of their own problems. They're very good at getting together, but what's holding them back is that trust and transparency. Like they're always worried someone's going to cheat them or someone's getting a better price. Once it becomes open and transparent, they work together much better. And that's what leads to a lot more productivity increases than anything else. In countries like Ethiopia, where they're doing coffee, we often see the farmers increase their income by up to 50% in the first year. In countries like Papua New Guinea, where they're doing other crops like cocoa and wheat, and Kenya was wheat and indigenous vegetables, we see 200 to 300% increases. And it's not, I'm not taking credit for that. We give them a system that lets them organize, and they often improve things for themselves. Cocoa, there's incredible amounts of waste in cacao. And as soon as the farmers get organised, that waste goes away. They start getting better prices. They start processing better together, and everyone benefits. And what is so important about this, we often go into, say, a village in Papua New Guinea of 1,000 people, and we deploy the phones to 100 farmers. We see those farmers maybe increase their income from, say, $1,000 a year to $3,000 over a couple of years. What's most important is that whole village flourishes, because it's not just that extra $2,000. That farmer spends it at the shop, and then the shop buys some fish, and the fisherman buys something else. And that money goes around and around that village many, many times before it actually goes anywhere else. And you see the whole village just start to flourish because there's more money, there's more food, and everyone does better. So, you know, we're very proud of the work we do in these, particularly the remote local communities that are disconnected.
Great, David. So I think a fabulous story which you have shared with us. I think the bases are there on transparency and also the trust you have mentioned. I think one of the key attributes which I have found from your words is that once the message is conveyed, once the trust is built, once the transaction is done, so I think the confidence will be on the higher side, and that actually helps in building the communities and also to transforming these rural communities, or transformation is quite easier to do. And I think the way you are doing using the blockchain, so something that is already part of finances there in their lives. So how can you actually help us? How can you actually define the kind of support that has been offered through AgUnity using the blockchain technology to help them in raising their productivity and also the prosperity which they are looking forward to?
Okay, there's two distinct ways for this, but I'm going to start with how AgUnity uses blockchain first, and we use it in the most simple way. Blockchain to us is an element of trust. We use, it's not a good idea when people have connectivity issues to let them directly connect to any blockchain. Generally, like micropayments and things using blockchain work very poorly with connectivity issues. The way we use blockchain is like a transaction log on a database. Means when a farmer hands over his crop to a cooperative or orders something or gets paid, all those transactions are written in kind of a double-sided accounting journal on the blockchain. What that means, and it was fantastic when the people in New Guinea realized that we were doing that, because they came to us and they told us, like in pidgin English, it was so sweet to hear, like, you know, I knows how you've been doing it. So they'd found out what blockchain is. They'd realized that when something is written to blockchain, no one can ever change it. And that's really the key, because a lot of the communities we work with have very limited trust in, you know, their buyers and their governments and things like that. Once they know something is recorded permanently, no one can change it. I mean, you can make corrections still. So if a farmer accidentally hands over 20 kilograms and they make a mistake, we can amend the record, but you can still see what happened and what we amended. And that's the key to improving the trust in the community, because they've got like a transaction log of everything. We found that even communities that are traditionally quite lawless, when there's clear records, they're very good at sorting things out all by themselves. It's when it's a he said, she said that things tend to go very poorly. Like this guy said he handed over 50 kilograms of cocoa beans, but the person who collected it is saying it was only 40 kilograms. Then that always tends to be a dispute over who's got more power in the situation. And that is very unfavourable to women farmers. It's very unfavourable to minorities or people with less power. If there's a clear record, that behaviour, very interestingly, not only that behaviour goes away, but a lot of the other unrelated behaviour we found suddenly becomes more honest. Once a few things are recorded, a whole community can start like acting with each other in a very transparent, and there's no bartering, no one's trying to trick each other all the time. So that's how we use blockchain as a component of AgUnity system. But then we did a really interesting thing last year that's with creation of the AgriUnity digital reward token. So we have a couple of thousand farmers in Ethiopia and Papua New Guinea. They're coffee farmers and cocoa farmers respectively. And we use the AgriUnity reward system. We actually spent over $500,000 on lawyer fees for this. It's one of my pet peeves, to make sure that we were creating a digital token in a way that is very above board. It's created as a non-cash payment token in a closed loop payment system, which means authorities almost always classify it the same way they would a frequent flyer program or game tokens. So it's not regulated like a cryptocurrency. We've been very careful to keep it in that non-regulated space, but it allows things like we can have coffee buyers in Australia who go in and get their monthly cup, their cup of coffee that's come from Ethiopia, and they can pick one of the farmers and they can send them a 40-cent tip directly to the farmer in Ethiopia. So we're already talking with, I better not name, I'll name one, World Food Programme, but we're also talking with other organisations about how they can directly use this AgriUnity reward token, which sits on top of our system, to send incentives or rewards or pay farmers for collecting data. Or there's a whole lot of uses of being able to send a small amount of something of value. And then the farmer, because the AgUnity system, the farmer's already getting paid off the platform, they can cash out the AgriUnity tokens in exactly the same way they would in their local currency, or collect their beans or spend it on a solar kit or spend it on something else. So we've got those two mechanisms already live and working, and the community seem to love them.
Great, David. Very encouraging for the farmers. But there comes a question now. When we talk about the small farmers and the way they actually go for the harvest, and also to have that kind of linkage which you are creating at the moment, I think one of the challenges would be to have the finance available to them, because once the harvest is being made, so they are looking for the money so that they can go for the next crop.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, one of the questions that comes into my mind is, how about you enable them or help them by providing quality inputs? And other examples, of course, you people have been working on this this kind of support. So can you tell us about how you are actually helping the farmers, especially small scale farmers, so that the challenges that they have, obviously in those countries, the quality inputs like seed, fertilizer, nutrients, and of course water channels. So these requirements have to be fulfilled, and they ask for money for that purpose. So an excellent idea which you have shared, the 42% of the price goes directly to the farmer in the local currency. But I think for execution part, we have to think about, or obviously you must have thought about it. So can you share some details in this domain?
Yeah, so we're working in a couple of countries with the organisation UNCDF, which is part of World Bank. They've enabled connectivity to financiers for exactly this purpose. We also, that's a big part of our Ethiopia project to connect them, and we're working on a project with rice farmers in Ghana to do very much what you say. What's important though is this is not something that AgUnity should do, because we would need to get financially regulated in those countries. There's plenty of other organisations to do it. This is why we created AgUnity the way we can. We can create a really simple applet. We can push it down to the farmer, and that can be something as simple as I need to get rice seeds for the next harvest. They click that, how much do you want? And that really is connecting to a financier that can then approve the farmer. What is so important and so different about the way we do that is because the farmer's using our app, we can see that this farmer is harvesting their rice, they're bringing it in, we know where their farm is. This is someone who might not have, in Papua New Guinea, a lot of these farmers have got no identity. There's no, like India's Aadhaar system, there's nothing like that in the country. So we've got farmers who really can't identify themselves. They can't prove they own the land because it's part of a community farm. But we can collect enough that makes them loan worthy when they previously wouldn't. And that's a very important aspect of what we do. We know they're a member of a cooperative. We know where they're coming from. We know that we can let them get photos of their farm and their trees. So we know that, okay, this is their farm. We know they're regularly doing, being regularly paying this. And the other very important things that happens when these farmers are part of a cooperative is the cooperative tends to help enforce the loan repayment. Because what we do is with the Ghana rice farmers, that group of rice farmers is all sort of assessed together. So if one of them doesn't pay their loan, the next time the others are going to be more difficult to get the loan. And what that means is the whole community gets together, and in some cases, if a person's having trouble paying it, the others will pay it for them, so they don't damage the credit rating of the community. And so, yeah, the community financing is very good. There's lots of organisations, and we work with many of them, that want to do that and want to do more of it. The problem is they usually can't get enough information on the farmer. So we talk to a lot of them, and there's IIX is a great organisation in Singapore. They've got a development fund that they're specifically trying to deploy money to farmers, and they usually can't. They're usually deploying it to a buyer organisation who then they hope will give it to the farmers, but it doesn't always trickle down the way it should. What we're trying to do is reverse that. And we hope in the future we can use this aggregate token to do exactly that. So when farmer needs money for something, they can use the aggregate. We can send them the aggregate token. We can program that so it can only be used to pay for something. So we can do microloans that are very controlled and traceable in that manner. We're not doing that yet. We're still doing the trade financing, but what we see as our role is providing that applet and having the data on the farmer, so it's a really easy process for a third party financier, and we can create those applets in a matter of days.
Excellent, David. So next question that comes into my mind is about the fintech-backed solutions you've actually been offering to the farmers. From there onwards, I think it's great to have the whole agri value chain covered across. So the way you are building at the moment with the partners, and from the work which has been done by AgUnity, I think the way you are doing it, I think working with over 300 cooperatives. So I think that is the biggest challenge that you have got. We have been working with the cooperatives in Pakistan also, and I think this actually helps a lot in solving the issues and taking it forward. So what do you think about having, we have very good partnership already there with Greg Chappell and Imran Khan, being working and supporting AgUnity, being the brand ambassador. And here we have been working with, people like Imran Khan, and cricket is something in our blood. So to take it forward, so I would like about the collaborations, because we have been working with the partners here, and international partners working in the climate change is also one of the things which are very much focused at the moment. So what do you think about working with working in Pakistan, especially the two of the main crops which I have seen, the commodities that you are working, one is sesame seed and the other one is maize. So Pakistan is among those countries who are doing wonderful in maize production recently. So our production is way above than average world numbers, which are there. So I think there exists a lot of farmers who need this kind of activity being done by you, and also people like us at Concave AGRI. So what is your thought about, because you have been part of these African countries supporting them, but in Asia, especially South Asia, we are very much open in this domain. So can you tell us how can we, actually your thought about collaborations in this part of the world?
So we've just got two very big projects on the go, the Ethiopia one, and we've got another one developing in Senegal. Now, in countries in Africa, we kind of need to set up operations and do it because there aren't partners like yourself. When we were talking about Pakistan before, Imran Khan office was actually going to introduce us to a number of companies like yourselves. That was about the next step we were going to go to. So we'd very much love to approach Pakistan like a joint venture. One, because we lack the bandwidth for the next, probably until next year, we won't have the bandwidth to have boots on the ground. And doing these projects is very important to go out and meet the farmers. We have a whole team in Indonesia, and they're in Indonesia, but during COVID, we learnt that much better to hire people in country because one, we couldn't fly people around. So we got really good at hiring people locally. But the team is still based in Indonesia, but we've got people in a dozen countries now that work for that team, and they stay with the farmers. They help them with the deployment and things like that. So with a country like Pakistan, anywhere in South Asia, we would much prefer to work up a joint venture arrangement, kind of license the technology and arrangement and work through a partnership. So this is why it's so exciting to be speaking to you guys now, because you seem to be in just the right spot, all the right people, and we've been sitting on what we know is a huge opportunity in Pakistan, just waiting things to settle and waiting for the right things to come up.
Thank you, David. Just looking forward to such kind of collaboration partnerships. One of the key things that is very much important, and I really feel excited about it, the way you are actually taking into account the data. So the data-driven farming or data-driven agriculture is the future that we are actually very much looking into. And in this domain, we have already got over 2 million farmers data with us in Pakistan, unlike many other players. So what do you think the value which can be created using the data-driven approach? And also, I'm not talking to that extent about the precision agriculture, that's the next step, but taking into account or correcting the basics, just like the way they go for in cricket, they ask for making changes in so that the basics are covered. So similarly in agriculture also, we are very much interested to help the farmers to take away those things which became obsolete. 100 years old practices should not be there, or no more following is required for that purpose. And this is one of the challenges that we have had. And obviously you have had the same challenge in Africa while working with those farmers. So can you tell us about how you are taking advantage of following this data-driven approach, and how actually you take it through to, or kind of bringing the trickle-down effect and taking it to doing the last mile coverage and helping the farmers to become more like enablers for others?
Totally. Look, it's a great topic, and we know an awful lot about that. So firstly, we were a founder of this company, AgUnity. That company raised $8 million in its first 6 months. It was really very successful. They got a big contract with the biggest supermarket chain in Australia. And then, unfortunately, they had a couple of managers that were from that company. And so they became very aligned to that company's way of doing business. We, at the same time when they were being founded, I was helping them. I was doing a lot of business development, and there were huge opportunities with AAON in Japan, with a big food importer in the Middle East. There was much bigger opportunities, but they kind of, got comfortable and went off. So we sold our shares, we made a few $1 million. And now we formed another company to go after the bigger opportunities. That company is called Tracingly. And why this is really interesting is I mentioned I was a global head at Standard Chartered Bank. I was actually global head of market data, which is, for anyone that knows the banking industry, market data is sometimes the second biggest spend in the bank. In Standard Chartered, it's $100 million per year. So that's the Bloomberg and Reuters contracts. We were very fortunate with Tracingly, this replacement of AgUnity, that we've, one of the partners is a IoT technology company in Sydney, Australia, that's been in business for 40 years. Ironically, they track the pallets for the same supermarket, but they also track things like bags of cobalt ore in Mongolia, and they're doing it all over the world. So they've got really good IoT tech, but that's a commodity. Then we actually brought in a guy called Ross Allen, and Ross was one of the early employees of a company called Market, which is the third or fourth biggest market data company after Bloomberg and Reuters. They were recently acquired for $60 billion US, something like that anyway. So he made a ton of money, and he'll be the CEO of Tracingly. So he's really good. Now, what's so interesting about this is, and there's a reason why we didn't do this as an AgUnity company. We're the biggest shareholder in that company, but we want it to be separate because the data company really talks to the supply chain and the commodity buyers. And it's a bit hard for us to play 2 feet. Like AgUnity wants to be seen as we're the ones that look after the farmers and we try to get value for the farmers and improve the farmers' income. We can't quite play both hands, as we discovered with Escobox. We've got to focus on our thing, but we own shares in this company who's creating a data trading platform around agricultural data. It's going to be modeled after Bloomberg, which is very different to the way, say, Facebook or Google works. Like when you sign up to Facebook, you basically give them your data and they do it back to you. Bloomberg really works very differently in that Bloomberg gets data from a whole lot of different sources. It sells them on to someone and then it pays little bits back to them. And that's what we think the future in the food industry is going to be, that a farmer can say, here's the data for what I put into my strawberries, or here's the rainfall figures from my farm. And when someone buys their bag of produce, they can look at the IoT device in that, go to the Tracingly system and say, yeah, I want to know all about this. I want to get the organic certification from this. If they get the organic certification, a few cents goes back to the farmer. And we'll use the aggregate token to pay the farmer. We can pay the farmer like 1 cent every time someone looks up the information on their commodity, which to a farmer somewhere like Pakistan or Ethiopia is actually pretty good money because, if their produce gets looked up 10 times in a week, they could be making, extra 10 cents here, 10 cents there. It all adds up and it's very, very good data trading. And that works right through the supply chain. So we've got a very sophisticated, great team, very sophisticated, and that company's founding now. And I think they'll raise a lot of money very easily. And that's another company that would love to have, partners around the world and particularly food producing nations like Pakistan that export food. There's a lot of opportunity to tap into that, not just from AgUnity, but there's a lot of other opportunities. They'll be working with the Aromia Coffee Union and the World Coffee Association and others. So they've got a really good starting project that's much bigger than what Escobox had.
Great, David. So I'm glad to share it with you that we have been working. Currently, we have signed a project with the Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research, ACIAR.
Yeah.
So we are helping the farmers, connecting them to the markets, using the platform that we have built for them to sell their produce directly to the consumers. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the key features. I would love to share it with you. And now we are collecting the data. So we have made clusters. So they are working on chickpea pulses. Yep. The project is like this. And in Pakistan, most of the chickpea and pulses are almost organic. So I am discussing with the Australian partners. One of my visit features this thing is how to get organic certification for this produce. So this is very interesting, very much there. I would like to share it with you so that things become very much clear also while we work together or looking to identify the scenarios and synergies to explore together. So one of the things that what we have been doing, we are not charging farmers for the services that we are providing. So at the moment, it includes the advisory and also the climate resilient technologies that we are working with, and also to help them to take things forward by connecting them to the external world. However, we have our margins there in selling the produce that they get, or the inputs being provided to them,
your business model is just the same as ours. Like we learned that
the loans. Yes. So the loans that they get from our partner banks. Yep. So we have been working like you on the same lines. I'm glad that we are following the same footsteps. So from that particular reason, I would like to ask, are you charging the farmers? Because
we do it pretty much. We do it pretty much similar way. We long ago learned that with impoverished micro farmers, it's just not worth charging them. So we charge the cooperatives, and that's usually a small amount. So like with Aromia Coffee Union, we charge $1 for farmer, and that covers a lot of the systems we do. We do when we provide the phones with the whole system to the farmers, we let them pay us back over 2 years or something like that. But usually, because we source the phones and re-engineer them, in most cases, the farmer, like in Ethiopia, the farmers value, where's the phone? That's the typical one we use. That's a military grade water resistant phone that's about equivalent of an iPhone 7. It's an Android phone, but it's about an iPhone 7 in spec. We land those in Ethiopia for about $70 US. The farmers, when they price them themselves, they believe it's a $200 phone. So they're very happy to pay, $50 a year to pay back the phone. It's a bargain to them. We don't make money from that, but we do pretty much what you're doing. Like, we make money from like the solar company and the input supplier and the marketplace where you shouldn't make money directly from the farmer. You make it from what the farmer does. And by far the best way to do that is you first help the farmer to improve their income, and then they trust you and they'll pretty much use our platform for everything. So in Papua New Guinea, where anything that they can't get from the local village, they would rather get from the AgUnity platform. They'd rather order a solar kit or a water pump or fertilizers or anything. We're just their go-to for everything. So what we're trying now is to get more and more services available to the farmers on that. And ultimately, we see the farmers spending pretty much half of their disposable income via our platform, and we just get small margins depending on what they're doing. You're still on mute.
You're mute.
Sorry.
No.
So that's, I think, great to listen about. But however, when we talk about the impact which has been created, so I'm talking about, yes, the support is there, but the socio-economic impact or the way things have changed in the lives of these farmers, can you give some examples or some inspirational stories to share with us so that the socio-economic impact being created by AgUnity?
Yeah, look, we see this all the time, and probably Papua New Guinea is the best example, but that Virginia Tech case study I'll show you, that really shows big impact increases. And so there's a couple of really important things we do. First and foremost, you've got to try to help the farmer increase their income, because that's how we make money. But two, when they increase their income, they spend it in the village, and that money just circulates around the village. You see the whole village flourish, and it's visible within a year. It's just amazing. We love that. The other thing that's vitally important, and this is particularly important for women and minority farmers or farmers that are in any way disadvantaged, women in Papua New Guinea tell us this time and time again, that they don't want to bring cash back to home, because if they take their coffee beans into the village, they sell them, everyone knows they're coming back with cash. The relatives and the men turn up and they want to have a party and it's gone that night. They can't save it and spend it. Whereas what we try to do is make a system where the money goes into the cooperative, they get it into a bank account, and they can do the transfer, they can pay their school fees, they can order a solar kit, they can order something else they want for the house, and they get back control of what they're doing. It's very empowering, particularly for women farmers, but also for typically the micro farmers get a lot of value of just being able to automatically order something rather than bring cash back. In the Pacific Islands, it's really apparent. If you go to the smaller villages, they'll typically have a couple of small shops. Those shops normally will sell like soaps and noodles and alcohol. And when the farmer's got $100, you can only buy so much noodles and soaps. And so a lot of the alcohol problems are actually caused by the fact that when they've got cash, there's not much else around to spend money on. So of course they spend it on alcohol. As soon as you give them the opportunity to buy more things, farmers can be incredibly responsible with how they spend money. It's just, you've got to have the ability to order something available right at the time when they have cash, before their friends turn up and say, hey, let's go and get a bottle and have some fun. So yeah, we've seen time and time again, villages flourish. And again, it's not really what we do. It's mostly the farmers do it themselves once you help them to get organized and give them access, and they'll tell you what other things you need to improve their situation.
Very rightly shared, David. So let me take this opportunity and also introduce you to one other thing that we are doing that might be of your interest is AgriSense. So this is our Power BI tool that we have developed. So we have all compiled all the data of Pakistan at one place and helping the farmers. So this gives you a very good picture what's going on in the inputs side, how much travel does the farmer make for getting the inputs, and similarly, what is the impact going on, how they get the credit from the banks. So I will share, I'll definitely ask you to visit agrisense.pk. That's our website. So Sumelak, you can put it in the chat window and can download the reports that are there. So very interesting stuff going on in Pakistan. So you can figure it out. What are the key challenges and how can we solve, or even I think by replicate the efforts being made by AgUnity in other part of the world. So this is something quite interesting for you to look into. And also, I think Pakistan also takes credit for one thing, that is when the blockchain was once used, or the first time used by WFP back in 2017 for the very first time to make the CBTs, cash-based transfers, in one of the province in Pakistan. So another thing that is from Pakistan for you to look into. The first pilot was done by WFP in Pakistan to use blockchain. So I think our time is running out. So my last question, David, would be, what advice would you give to other organizations that are looking to use blockchain technology to support agriculture? For example, in Pakistan, we have 230 million people. Out of 40% of the country's labor is actually engaged in agriculture. And from the experiences you have, what is the one advice you would like to give to organizations like us and also to the farming community based upon the experiences you have had as a banker farming in agriculture?
Yeah, sure. Look, blockchain's main, the main benefit for blockchain is an immutable record. And it really comes back to that trust and cooperation, which is the center to everything in local communities. And so when blockchain can be used to improve the trust but provide transparency and trust, it's extremely good. We were part of the first cohort of World Food Programme. They ran it out of Munich. So that's probably the similar program that developed that one. So we were the first cohort of that. And then we did our project in Ethiopia with them as a result of that. And we've been part of a number of other crypto technology communities that have worked in impact areas. Sadly, a lot of them get a little bit carried away with using advanced features when it's not necessary. We're dealing with people who, they want to sell their produce. They want to be able to buy something. They want to be able to feed their children. A lot of companies that are doing smart contracts and intercompany loans and things like that, we've seen many of them fail, like come and go, because they were trying to over-engineer things or do things that were too sophisticated. And I think keep it simple is really the plain method. We're solving simple issues, and the most important way to solve those issues is to spend time with the farmers, listen to what their problems are, and just find the quickest, easiest way to solve that problem. Like, I can't get this. Okay, we'll work out a way that you can get that. Or I don't know how much I should be selling my crop for. Good, we'll make sure you get that information. So a lot of the things you can do for them just comes down to listening to the farmers and not trying to overcomplicate what is often very simple problems.
Excellent. I think I really enjoyed the session. Sumera, thank you for connecting us with David and his team. I'm looking forward to have direct interaction with them while I will be in Australia next
Yeah,
month,
it's great that you
most probably.
Yep.
So over to you, Sumaira.
Thank you so much, Ali and David. It was really a very good session for me as well, just to understand, how different organizations are working just to, combat one thing, that is food security, and how to really improve the lives of farmers. So thank you so much for both of your time. And, we look forward to, a more collaborative effort in Pakistan and Australia as well. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Goodbye. Look forward to the follow-up.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.